Viewer discretion is advised.
I guess if you're going to pick somebody, it better be a true crime podcaster. Because
it's true.
It's not like I'm sitting here like totally blown
Shocked.
away or shocked that these things happen. I did open the notes and go, oh dear.
This was actually the fan pick case.
Thank you.
So thank you to the fan picker.
So appreciative
you know
of you.
who to blame.
But I'm going to try my best here as far as there are some pronunciations and things, which, again, like I did try to look up, but it's just so... And then who do you trust on the internet? I don't know. So
trust no one on the internet.
Trust no one on the internet is the answer to that question. So we're going to try our best here.
Okay.
When I first read through the notes, I didn't know you guys don't know the notes. So I was like...
No idea.
I was like, wow, they are really trusting me with this... tale. Okay, so you know what? Just unplug your router if you're like this is a lot.
Airplane mode activate.
Network error.
I have my finger hovering over it.
Your call just dropped. Weird.
It's the weirdest thing.
I can just hang up the cast at any moment.
The computer lid just starts like closing. You're like, I'm sorry, I'm losing you. I don't know.
I'm going through a tunnel.
Oh no!
I'm on a desktop. I can't close my computer.
Oh well, you can if you try hard enough. But
you're right.
Just throw it off your desk.
Do this.
Tip it over. Okay, folks. Enough bandying about.
Enough trying to avoid starting this case.
Procrastination.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into it. So. This story takes place in Shiprock. I don't know if Lucy knows anything about it or Amanda does, but
I've been there.
You have? Oh, cool. I actually never heard of it, but is a town with a population of around 8,000 people located in the Navajo Nation. The town itself, the name of it, I'm going to try, Naat Ani Niz, which means tall leader in the Navajo language. Fun fact. And the name Shiprock comes from a massive volcanic rock formation in the nearby desert known as the Shiprock Pinnacle, which 19th century explorers believed looked like a clipper ship. So they came up with the clever name of Shiprock.
Got it.
I'm gonna look up pictures.
Yeah, I bet it's pretty. I haven't put any in the folder. So
I got it.
Thank you.
Oh, it does kind of look like a ship.
I love it.
Cool.
It's like
a protrusion.
A protrusion. Your classic protrusion.
Yeah, a classic protrusion.
If I've ever seen a protrusion, this is it, you know. And the rock formation itself is a sacred site for the Navajo, and they refer to it as Tsebitai, which translates to rock with wings, which I think is really, really beautiful too. So on May 2nd, 2016, so we're really rushing up to modern day here, when school let out for the day in Shiprock, 12-year-old Gracelyn Mike set off to walk from school with her two younger siblings, whose names were Ashlyn and Ian. Ashlyn was 11 years old and Ian was 9. So right off the bat, this is going to be a rough one. I'm just going to put it out there.
Right off the bat, we're using past tense, and that's a sign.
Yeah. I have also learned about a fun fact about myself, which is probably pretty logical, but really didn't hit me until I had a child, which is like, wow, I'm much more sensitive about child stories, I guess, just for proximity reasons, I suppose.
Right.
So, so buckle up. This is everybody's warning. If
you need to popcorn one of us in, we
got you.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay, I love it. Anyway, so Gracelyn is heading home from school with her two younger siblings, Ashlyn and Ian. Gracelyn ends up getting kind of ahead of her younger siblings because they wanted to stop and play in a canal by the side of the dirt road. So when a red van pulled up alongside her and the stocky young man driving offered her a ride, she was alone at this point. Now, Gracelyn's immediate move is to say, nope, get away from me. And this van pulls away and out of sight. But I think it, for obvious reasons, puts her on edge. Yeah. So she arrives at home and is like, oh, my brother and sister are close behind, so they should be here any minute. Well, unfortunately, the minutes start ticking by, and her siblings did not arrive at home. And like obviously this is not her fault, but I imagine that would be a lot of like pressure as the older
survivor's
sibling.
guilt
Yeah,
would
exactly.
be horrific.
Exactly.
Horrific.
So that just, something to think about. So her siblings are not arriving home. She's getting more and more nervous. And she knew her father, whose name was Gary Mike. So their last name is Mike, like Mike. So Gary Mike would be busy at work. So she called her mother, Pamela Foster, who lived in California. And she was like, there was this guy in the van and he asked me for a ride. I said no, but now I don't know where my siblings are.
Never meet a man.
No.
Never. So Foster, the mother, hung up with Graceland, immediately called the Navajo Nation Police Department in Shiprock to report her 2 children missing. She would later describe how, quote, they kept putting me on hold and transferring me, telling me that they were short on staff, that there was only one officer on duty at Shiprock. So pretty immediately we're getting like not a quick response to this, which is, ends up being not good. So she's frustrated, she's infuriated, she hangs up with the police department and, like any other 21st century person, goes to social media seeking some help, some numbers, like reinforcement. So she posts about Ashlyn, Ian, and the man in the red van and saying, this is the latest news I've heard. I need help figuring this out, finding my kids. So at 6:53 p.m. that evening, Gary Mike himself went to the police station in person and filed a missing persons report.
Do you know if they were trying to work with police, like Navajo police, or just the local, like, U.S. police department?
As far as I can tell, this is the reservation specific, like the Navajo police. And then they end up
trying to seek support from.
Yes, correct. Okay. So it sort of branches out when the story gets going, and they seek help from the police in, I think, Flagstaff.
Okay.
Yeah, that was another thing that we talked about with the missing and murdered Indigenous women. The problem of jurisdiction.
Oh yes,
because who know? If it's Navajo police, if it's reservation police, if it's like local police or whatever, and then if the person is caught on reservation land, who they belong to.
We'll kind of get to it in my case for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then you think about like other resources. I mean, they said they only had one officer on duty. Right. Like they're swamped, I imagine, with other stuff.
Yeah, that's usually the issue is the resources available on the reservation.
Right.
And then the indifference of the officers and the departments that they reach out to for support
to help
in these cases. Yep.
Exactly. So that's kind of what we're facing here, unfortunately. And they did, I'll get to it, but they do make some changes legally, but a lot of it is too little too late. But we're glass half full, I suppose.
Yeah.
We're trying to smile through it.
Right.
Okay. So Gary goes to the police station. He files a missing persons report for his 2 children. And only about 20 minutes after he files this, there is a couple driving through the Navajo Nation and they spot a young boy walking along the side of the road. And they pull over to see if he needs help. And understandably, he's already traumatized. He is frightened. He, for obvious reasons, does not want to get in the car with this couple. But they don't have a phone signal and they persuade him to get in the car. They, tell him, we're safe, we're going to take you home. And they drive to the closest Navajo Nation Police Department. So this is kind of happening simultaneously as their dad is filing this missing persons report. So Ian, the boy, he's back and he's safe. And he tells police that he and Ashlyn had accepted a ride from the man in the van because she had hurt her foot while they were playing at the side of the road and couldn't really walk. And so this person took advantage of that vulnerability and convinced them to get in the car and take a ride. So the 2 were in the car and they realized pretty quickly that they are not being driven in the direction of their home, nightmare, but instead into the desert toward Shiprock Pinnacle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's a very big, open, desolate area.
Yes. The thought of driving away from your family home and people and into the desert is terrifying. So the man drove them to a secluded location. This is a toughie. Okay. He drove her to a secluded location, and then he took Ashlyn into the desert. He raped her, and then he took a tire iron and bludgeoned her before returning to the van, obviously without her, leaving her there, and ordering Ian to get out, and then just drove away.
Oh my God.
Just left them both there. And Ian, a little backstory, so before he was discovered by the couple, he had walked for miles alone through the desert searching for somebody to help his sister. So just
these
trauma
kids.
all around everywhere.
I found some photos of to add for your case too, and like Ian
thank
was
you for
just
doing that.
they were so little. Like
Yeah,
to
putting that in
imagine this
perspective.
little boy walking alone trying to find help.
And probably not, not even knowing that he's safe at this point. Like this guy's driving around in this car and there's no one else around to help. So you don't even know that you're safe at this point.
Oh my God, they are so little.
They're just
go
little
look.
precious babies. I just can't even, like, I'm getting emotional looking at these pictures of them.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that, as horribly tragic as that is, does also kind of make the story that much more, I don't know. Like, I feel like I always have a hard time looking up photos, but it's like, well,
Right.
that's part of it.
Yep.
So, yeah, very, very, pretty immediately tragic. So he, thankfully was rescued by a couple who was caring and kind and safe, even though I think it probably took a lot for him to get in the car after
Of course.
the first time in a car. So he is thankfully taken home and rescued, and then, tells everybody about what happened to his sister. So a manhunt was launched in Navajo Nation based on the kind of vague recollection of this little boy who had to try and lead them in the right direction. And so they tried to follow the path he laid out and see if they could find any sign of either this attacker or the girl. So around 8 p.m. that evening, Pamela Foster, the mother, her cousin, whose name was Maybelline Buck, called the police department I said Flagstaff, which is not even in New Mexico, is it? It's in Arizona.
That's in Arizona, but that's okay.
I don't know what I'm doing here. The geography is not my
You're
strong
doing great.
suit. I meant, let's see, I have the name here. Hold on. Farmington is what I meant.
Got
and
it.
like one could argue they do start with the same letter, but
Yeah.
They do start with the same letter.
thank you. I agree.
We support this.
Thank you. So Farmington, New Mexico. So Maybelline calls the police there and says, have you seen this story about my missing, I guess, nieces, nephews?
Right.
She says, my cousin just posted on Facebook that her kids were kidnapped, and I want to make sure that you know about this from the Navajo PD. And she explains, they found my nephew. He escaped from the van. They still have my niece. This is like pressing and urgent.
Yeah.
And the police dispatcher in Farmington says, we have not heard anything about this kidnapping. So once again, a blow to this case of, they're just losing time left and right.
Communicate.
Yes, exactly. So Buck, the cousin, then decided to go to the Farmington Police Department in person, where she was told that a search team was ready to go, but they needed to wait for official approval from the Navajo Nation because it's a jurisdiction issue. So basically
There it is.
exactly what Lucy was saying. So in the meantime, word that Ashlyn was still missing, this is a very 21st century story, like I said, was going viral on, Facebook. So people were sharing this, trying to get the word out there. So that was happening, unsurprisingly, a lot quicker than all the red tape and stuff that was going on at the police department. So this is going viral. Friends and family members are sharing this, and it's getting out to the further community. And pretty soon, friends and family members assembled these kind of
Like search parties.
yeah, like ragtag search, like last minute search party situation.
Someone
And
has to do fucking
someone
something.
has to.
The
If you-
community is just doing the best they can.
Exactly. If like no one else is hitting the ground running, I mean, what are you going to do? So they assemble these like ad hoc search parties, and they combed the area near Shiprock Pinnacle where Ian remembered being driven. And after the sunset, Gary Mike, the father, didn't even go home. He walked through the desert with his cell phone flashlight, just looking for his daughter. So Ashlyn's family continued to call the Farmington Police Department, demanding to know why, now that they do have the communication and know that she's missing, have not released an Amber Alert for Ashlyn.
Yeah, because now you fucking know.
Yeah, there's no excuse
she's
anymore.
What, 11?
Yeah.
12?
11, yeah. There's no...
the fucking Amber Alert out.
Excuse.
It goes to everybody's phone. That's what it's there for.
Exactly. What's like the benefit of not participating in that?
You're not saving any points by not putting it out.
There's not like a limited number.
They're not trying to benefit necessarily from not doing it. They just don't care.
They just don't care. Yeah. That's a much clearer way to look at it. Exactly. So, they keep calling and they keep pressing and saying, why has an Amber Alert not been issued for Ashlyn? And it turned out later, it was revealed that the Navajo Nation Police Department hadn't requested the Amber Alert until 9:07 p.m. And again, because of this jurisdiction thing, the police department outside of town was like, well, we couldn't do anything. And so it's just this jumble of like things going wrong all at once.
I hate it.
It's terrible. I mean, it's like hopeless from the start. So even further complicating the process, Amber Alerts are typically initiated by state police. And again, this is a jurisdiction thing, so they couldn't necessarily press the button or do whatever they do.
Well, and the Navajo Nation had to request it. So it doesn't even sound like they have the capacity to issue an Amber Alert on their own.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought of that either. I guess because it's a state process, they have to put in, it's almost like an extra step. It sounds like... Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm just picking apart like the way that is written. It sounds like they don't have access to the button.
Yeah,
whatever the fucking button is.
There's probably only one button.
Sure, yeah. So the Navajo Nation had requested the alert from the FBI, who had passed the request on to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who then contacted the New Mexico State Police, who finally launched the Amber Alert process. So it is like a state
there's a
issue.
Process, It goes through a chain of command.
Quite a long one, it sounds like.
Which, I gotta say, I do understand making sure that we're getting everything
it's like checks
accurate.
And balances. Everybody's looking at
because you lose your kid in a grocery store and you're freaking out for 10 minutes and you can't just all of a sudden issue an Amber Alert and then you find them looking at the bouncy balls on that one end cap. Like, I get
Always.
it. Or like Ashley and I used to do, hiding in the center of the like racks of clothing, those circular racks of clothing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we used to scare the shit out of my mom. My sister used to run away like that all the time. My mom had to put bells on her shoes. So, like, I get it. I get having a little bit of checks and balances for an Amber Alert, but it's like, this seems like a lot.
That's when it's so hard, because it's like, I understand the need for, limitations and that kind of thing. But then when it sounds so extreme, you're like,
how do you even fucking get one?
Yeah. That's when the racism kicks in.
Well, right.
Great.
It's all of these things.
I mean, this is like example A of exactly that.
Well, that's the thing. All of these... There's opportunities for racism, classism, ageism, all, ableism, all the isms through all of these, levels of the judicial system.
Right.
That have their hands on this.
Infiltrated the whole thing. So, there's no real saving grace here, unfortunately. So by the time the Amber Alert request had actually been made and had also made its way through these various agencies, the chain of command, the alert didn't end up going out until 2:30 a.m., which was 8 hours after Gary Mike had initially filed that missing persons report, which is also right around the same time when Ian was found and even gave direction and explained what had happened. So at that point, they were already getting answers that they needed to do something. But it took 8 more hours for this Amber Alert to even go out.
It's excruciating.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being
it's a whole fucking
one of those
day.
Parents.
Yeah.
It's a whole day.
Yeah.
And going out at 1 a.m. How much is that going to help?
Right. Nobody's out who could have been looking or helping. So the difficulty of this Amber Alert process had been a known problem for actually quite some time. And in 2006, what had happened is the Department of Justice had launched an initiative called Amber Alert in Indian Country, through which the Navajo Nation had received $330,000 in federal grant money to set up like a dedicated Amber Alert program. I guess get their own button for the Amber Alert.
Yeah, they need their own button.
Exactly. Right. If they're going to have the jurisdiction there, then, they should have access to that. And then they were also able to dedicate or appoint a police captain as the Amber Alert coordinator. But then you think that you would have thought this part through. When the police captain retired, there was nobody to be the coordinator, and they just didn't appoint somebody. So it was sort of like, the program just fell apart because it was hinged on this one old guy who retired.
Oh my God, Department of Justice.
Oh my God.
It's like,
come on.
It's like nobody thought about that when they hired him and he was like 60 and they were like, oh, okay, well, we're going to have to look for somebody new in a few years. Jesus. I guess maybe you're not 60 when you're retiring from the police. I imagine you're much younger than that. But so they just kind of didn't think that part through.
This is fucking so egregious.
I know.
Okay.
Balls
it is
were
egregious.
dropped.
Yeah. Yep. No balls were caught anywhere.
Yep.
And so when the captain retired, nobody was appointed and the program fell apart. And half the grant money was actually returned to the federal government because they were no longer using it for the intended purposes.
Don't give it back.
It's like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it's painful. It's painful.
Don't give it back. Okay.
Yes. So that is how that's basically the context of this whole Amber Alert, circus. That's the context. That's what had happened. Clusterfuck is, I think that's the official word, according to your boyfriend, the Encyclopedia Britannica. Yeah. So ultimately, Ashlyn's body was found, unfortunately, by a search party of her own family members.
Jesus.
It's got to be that thing. I mean, I've heard people describe it as like, you want to find something and you also don't want to find something if you're, in this position, which I think it's never been more true than in this case. Yeah. So her family found her body 11 a.m. the day after her disappearance. She was found near a dirt road about 6 miles south of Shiprock Pinnacle. And later that day, this is where things start to go even more off the rails. There were about half a dozen men from the Native American church in town who attended a ceremony in a sweat lodge to pray for Ashlyn. And one of the men in the lodge was 27-year-old Tom Begay.
Oh, they always return or want to be part of the search party. It's such a thing.
It's like a sick compulsion.
It's so
sit down,
weird.
go away. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's sick. Mm-mm. And to know, can you imagine, family members, people close to her are there, and you're, in their midst? I mean,
everyone's
so wrong.
grieving. They assume that you're grieving also.
You gotta be, sad. So Begay himself, his name's Tom Begay, it's sort of like Bengay without the end. So I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm hoping.
It's Begay.
Begay, okay. So Begay had become a member of the church after a church member had discovered he and his younger brother living in a filthy trailer and surviving on pretty much breakfast cereal. Unfortunately, both of them, here we go with cycles, had been severely abused as children. And when their parents died, they were essentially left to fend for themselves with very few real world skills, very few resources, and then obviously just the history of being abused while you were being quote unquote parented. So
it's a cycle of trauma. This man experienced a lot of trauma and that helped form the person he became.
Exactly.
That's how it fucking works.
It's just tragic. So he is at this ceremony, and about halfway through the ceremony, the church members begin to hear shouting coming from outside. So they exit the sweat lodge to find a line of police cars and officers pointing guns at them, which
Oh
has
my
got to
God.
be alarming when you're in like
Whoa.
a sacred space and
Yeah.
and praying. So they see this site, and it turns out that an anonymous tipster had called in to report that they had seen a red van matching the description of the one Ashlyn had gotten into
He drove to the sweat lodge
at the church, at the swell. Yes.
in the car he
Are you
used to
kidding
abduct
me?
these children.
And by the way, not just like a silver Toyota, like a red van.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh my God.
It's
the
just
literal sore thumb of cars. Unbelievable.
just parked it right,
I
popped
mean,
it right in front of him.
Also, thank you, Tom.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to say, bad idea, but like in this case, I guess
yes, thank
I'm
you.
thankful for that.
Yeah.
For that
You
one
essentially
small
turned
thing.
yourself in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he drives this red van to the church. Somebody tips off the police, and they arrive to arrest the owner, Tom Begay. So upon interrogation, Begay confessed to abducting both of the Mike children, driving them to a remote location. He admitted to raping Ashlyn and hitting her with a tire iron. He said he did that because he was ashamed and didn't want anyone to know what he had done. And this is a pretty dark part, pretty heavy part, just a little warning for anybody who might be sensitive. So he claimed that Ashlyn had still been alive and moving when he left her, which then added just this like massive amount of like pain for her loved ones who were like racing against the clock earlier.
Yeah. She could have
And
survived.
hitting a wall. Like, yeah, there's
fucking Amber
no
Alert.
way to know,
Yeah.
but that's sort of like you don't want to have to think about that. It's just an extra.
Yeah.
I don't know, just an extra. And to be fair, we don't necessarily know that was true.
We don't, but it probably didn't help that she was left in the desert with a head injury for 8 fucking, a day and a half, basically.
Right. Like at that point, there was zero hope, but they don't actually even know if it's true that she was alive or whether Tom was just trying to kind of downplay like the murder aspect of it. So,
Alleviate
for what
his own guilt, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. And try to be like, oh, well, she wasn't dead. And, so we don't know.
Kill her.
Right. Exactly. Not technically, And so I don't know if he's trying to play that angle or if that was really true. But it's something that now the parents and family unfortunately have to live with that thought. So Begay was charged with Ashlyn's murder, and he accepted a plea deal that sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And at the sentence hearing, his lawyer, a guy named James Lunam, described his client as dissociative and suffering from untreated mental illness and severe intellectual disabilities. And while noting that he was not making excuses for his client, Lunam went on to explain that as a child, Begay had been regularly hit in the head with a 2x4 if he ever, misbehaved or did anything wrong, and had, since his arrest, come to understand the severity of what he'd done. Again, this is his attorney, so I don't, take it with a grain of salt. But
I know, but we'll get to a lot of this in my case too. Like, this stuff matters in court.
Absolutely.
We need, if we are going to have any kind of justice, and specifically restorative justice, we also have to take into account the circumstances that put this person here in the first place so that we can stop these cycles of abuse. It fucking matters. It doesn't mean he should walk free.
No, sure. It's not an excuse. It's just more
but
context.
It's an explanation.
It's an
context.
explanation. Yeah.
Well, it also helps us to quit putting reactionary laws into place and more
exactly. Prevention.
Because I just feel like we get to a point where everyone's like, wow, big question mark. I can't believe it. And it's
what
like, well,
could
maybe
we have
if
done?
exactly, like we had no way of knowing. And it's like, well, maybe
we did though.
Yeah. Maybe take a closer look. So, that is the context of, I mean, clearly we already know he had a very tragic abusive past. So there we go. And Ashlyn's parents did speak at the sentencing hearing. Pamela Foster, the mother, her statement read in part, "My world spun so fast I fell to my knees and cried. The tears have never stopped flowing since. Knowing Begay will live the rest of his life in a living hell and won't be able to hurt any other children and families is a sort of consolation, but I will never heal and closure is nowhere in sight." So just...
Can't blame her for feeling that way at all.
Absolutely not, no. So Ashlyn's death and the lacking, I would say lackluster, if anything, police response made national headlines, thank God. and did inspire some change. So in November of 2017, the Senate unanimously passed the Amber Alert in Indian Country Act, which was signed into law by P. Trump in April of 2018. I don't know. I was going to say president. I was like, I don't want to say that anymore. Yeah, you know. You've heard of him. So he signed that into law, and this act aimed to address the shortcomings that had resulted from the last bungled attempt at this. And so they were able to, I don't know, I guess at least patch some things up. And so this actually has already helped to, quicken the process of getting an Amber Alert for other children who've gone missing on tribal land. So I will leave you with, I'm not leaving you, but I will leave.
You'll wrap up your case.
Thank you. That's a better way to say it.
She just leaves. I can't do this
I
anymore.
will leave you. Airplane mode. Bye.
Blaze, what do you do?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Sorry. So I will stay here, but I will wrap up my story with the following quote in the words of Esquire reporter Rachel Monroe. If the bill is backed with robust funding and embraced by community leaders, then children who go missing on tribal lands will fare better than they might have before. But the Amber Alert in Indian Country system doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists within the fraught legacy of colonialism. Those wounds are old and deep and still hurt today. They're there in the despairing calls to emergency dispatch, in the Facebook posts, and in the yellow balloons at a roadside memorial. They're the reason behind this imperfect patchwork system of overlapping tribal, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. It's a system with many cracks, and it's often the most vulnerable people who fall through.
Oh.
The end.
Oh, that hit me right in the heart.
Very
I do
well
kind of want
said.
to leave now and maybe cry for a bit, but I am going to stay because I did promise
Should we take
to
a
stay.
cry break?
We've got more crying to do. You did a wonderful job.
Well, thank you.
Presenting
that
case.
Thank you in a sad, it's like.
It's just this
gotta
is
go
like
through it.
so prolific.
Yeah.
Too. And, obviously on and off of Indian reservations.
Sure.
But, the shortfalls of resources and cooperation from surrounding police departments
Absolutely.
really fucking makes a difference.
Absolutely.
It makes a huge difference.
I'm just so relieved that at least it got, headlines, which
Yeah.
normally
it's
doesn't happen.
And think about how it has to be this egregious to even get headlines.
Like to be
it's-
shocking enough for people to care. Yeah.
Children go missing every fucking day,
Right,
and we
exactly.
don't hear about it at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can't. It's rough, but we can't not talk about it or look at it.
It's important to look at it. So thank you so much
Oh, thank you for
covering
covering
that. And
No,
sorry
of
to dump
course.
that
Not
in
that you
your
had
lap.
a choice.
Mwahaha. Well, thank you for, doing the job Em usually does, which is just sit there and go, oh.
Well, I sure hope you liked that clip. If you did like that clip, make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us a nice review, and joining us on Patreon for even more video content, audio content, salacious content all around. Come join us. Treat yourself.